And I am the big O, Jerry Ostroski. She is Sara Larson, and this is the Line to Gain fourth quarter right here on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network, brought to you by our awesome sponsors at Buffalo's Pizza, Picasso's.
Hey, football fans, the season is here, so you know that means family, football, and food. But for the NFL's best fan base, it can't be just any food. Bills Mafia only eats the best during the season, and the best is Picasso's Pizza. With 4 great locations in Western New York, it's so easy to treat yourself to the most flavorful pizza on game day. Picasso's, we are Buffalo Pizza, shipping local and nationwide. Order online at picassospizza.net.
Once again, I'm the big O. She's Sarah, and as always, here on the fourth quarter, we talk a little bit of college football, and we'll go over a little bit of last week and then head into this week's games. And we got a big one in Columbus, Ohio. But Sarah, hope you're doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good. Last week we had a couple of exciting games.
Yes.
We had the Oregon and Washington game. It was the only game of the week that I was able to smile about because I definitely wanted the Huskies to win. So, Colorado put up 29 points in the first half of their game and then ended up losing. And then everyone knows my Hurricanes not doing too good 2 weeks in a row. So I definitely was happy with the Washington Huskies and the fight that they put up against Oregon. That was a great game.
Interesting game. And, let me run this one by you before we get into picks of last week and then our picks for this week. Really interesting things going on in the world of football and the sport of football, and it all revolves around analytics. I thought that game on Friday night, I thought that this was the first game that I really, really questioned Deion's coaching experience. I thought that Deion made some really, really prideful decisions that cost them the football game. It put momentum on the other side of the field. It put him in some bad spots. They end up blowing a huge lead. In some aspects, the largest lead ever lost, I think, at Colorado or Pac-12, whatever it was. I can't remember.
Crazy.
But then you look at Oregon when they're playing Washington, and you knew that points were going to be scored in that game. So points are, they're valuable, right? And Dan, the head coach at Oregon, Dan Lanning, he decides to go for it on fourth down multiple times, doesn't get the kicks, and then ultimately at the end misses a kick to win it. And this is a part of analytics that bother me. I think these coaches have got all this bravado because they look at numbers and they feel that they can manipulate games because of the mathematics, but he lost that football game for him.
Yeah, and I remember growing up just falling in love with football, and the whole adage was you always take the points, always take the points, always take the points. Right. And then all of a sudden over I would say last 10 years, analytics has started to play so much of a bigger role. It makes you question and concern. It's not just football. You hear about it in baseball too, and who should be the starting pitcher on this game and who's but it just bothers me that we're using all this math instead of common sense sometimes. I understand if you're down by 8 points, you're going to go for 2. I understand if you're down by 9, there's no point of going for 2. You're going to get that touchdown or the field goal, whichever one you can get in that moment, so they can get a chance to go back out there and score again. That to me, it's always just been common sense, not whether or not you go for it on fourth down, or if you decide to try to go for 6 rather than 3. And you did it. I think it was 2 or 3 times during the game. He left the win on the table.
Right. Exactly. When you think about these things, and I always look at it from a player standpoint because, while I have coached in high school for 15 years, I still go back to when I played and I think about all the work this football team put in and all the work these guys put in to put themselves in a position to try to get into that playoff, to try to win a national championship. And, now granted, the kicker still had to make the kicks. We don't know if the snap would have been
Right.
good, if the kick would have been blocked. But when you look at where these attempts to go for it on fourth down were, you'd have to think they were chip shots, and that field goal would have been good. These kids now probably are on the outside looking in for a chance to win a national championship
Right.
because of the decisions that your head coach made. Now you got to ride with the guy, that's who brought you in, but still it's kind of silly to me.
So I have a question for you as a former player. When you're on offense, you want to see your coach have confidence in you, especially 4th and 1 or 4th and
Right.
goal, do you feel like it's as much of a confidence booster for the offense to have the coach feel like you can get that first down, but also that big of a hit to the defense once you don't get it, and now all of a sudden you got to go out there and really batten down the hatches in order to make sure that they don't score on you
Right.
again, because now you're still behind.
Right. It's a great question. I think it kind of boosts both sides of the ball, right? I mean, obviously your head coach is confident in his offense, they can get the job done. But also he's telling your defense, especially when you go for a first down out on like the 45-yard line, right? It gives that boost to your defense where the head coach feels that we can stop them.
Right.
But in these types of games, especially a game in that conference that has become such a rivalry game, you got to throw that out the window, man. I mean, you got to make good decisions, and another team that didn't make good decisions, like Colorado the night before, it cost them a W. So yeah, I mean, I can see where it would give guys confidence, but then you don't make it twice. And I mean, if you pulled that defense after that, you're probably a little bit pissed off, I would imagine.
Right.
Because now they got to go out there and
Right.
try to,
Well, here's
try to do this. Yep, there's a new top 25. Oregon falls to 9. Interesting
Here's the
things
new,
coming out of
Yep.
interesting things coming out of East Lansing, or not East Lansing, out of Ann Arbor. East Lansing, where Michigan State is. Michigan's in Ann Arbor. Supposedly we have a possible Bill Belichick type scandal going on with Michigan. There's been the Big Ten has notified the athletic department of Michigan that they are being investigated for on-site scouting. And the on-site scouting by Michigan against teams they're getting ready to play revolves around signal stealing. So
wow,
that is
I didn't hear
something,
that.
that just came out today. Saw that. So that's something to be looking at. Well, you know what? And Harbaugh's one of these cats. I mean, I think Harbaugh's gotten so much pressure on him that he's kind of lost his mind, and he's done a lot of things that have been questionable lately.
When I look at this top 25, the first thing I have to say is, to me, Georgia still is not playing like the number 1 team in the country. I feel like they're still sticking up there because that's what they were preseason.
Yep.
Same thing with Michigan. The fact of the matter is Michigan's blown out some of their competition. They definitely look the part, but then you look at who they've played.
Yeah, Michigan hasn't played the schedule that some of these other teams have played.
They don't have that resume. Now, I can kind of say the same thing for FSU. FSU, they played Notre Dame, and that's really it. So right now I feel like Washington should be jumping up there considering their win against Oregon. And so some of these games are going to be, intriguing to say the least, coming up soon, because they got to stop looking at preseason rankings and start looking at their overall resume and who they've played. We're halfway through the season. We're more than halfway through the season at this point.
Well, there will be a shakeup in the top 10 after this week, because number 3 Ohio State plays number 7 Penn State at 12:30 on Saturday. So there's your marquee game of the week. I would expect the Buckeyes to take care of business. James Franklin doesn't seem to be, or I know he's not very good in big games, but stranger things have happened. there will be mix-ups there. Notre Dame obviously winning last week against USC kind of solidifies them. They're probably the best 2-loss team in football right now.
Or
Yeah,
USC fraud, complete and
yeah.
total
Well,
fraud.
USC is who they
They have
are
no
because of their
defense.
head coach. Yeah, I mean it's the same thing they were at
Yeah.
Oklahoma.
But I feel like Notre Dame isn't as good as, we think. And they've gotten beat twice to show that they're not exactly
Right, but I think Notre Dame's better than you think they are. I mean, they lost to Ohio State. Now they did lose. They didn't lose the game to Duke. What's their other get lost to? I can't remember.
I thought
Was
it
it
was
Duke?
Duke.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
Duke. So you have that, and before Duke's quarterback got hurt in that game, I mean Duke was playing at a high level. I know Clemson's not in the top 25, but they did beat Clemson as well. Um, I'm not a Notre Dame apologist. I'm not a Notre Dame fan, but I do think they're better than their 2 losses. I think that they're a better team than the 2 losses they've had, and you can't really be upset about the one, considering it was the number 3 in the country, number 3
Yeah.
team in the country now. So, but no, I mean there will be some movement this week. Again, Penn State, Ohio State's the marquee game.
So this is
That's
last
really,
week's, by the way. This is last
yeah.
week's picks, and neither of us did all that well. I was 500 and 5-5, and you were 4-6. So yeah, it was
If you
another
took the
tough
spread
week.
away,
Yeah.
I think that I would be much better. And then there you go, you lose Oregon because the coach doesn't want to kick field goals, and that game was 2.5. You didn't win that one.
I will say my biggest surprise of the week was the serious destruction of Washington State against Arizona.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. I mean, 44-6. It was just unreal. So I was very surprised by that game.
But you got to start giving Arizona a little bit of credit because they played some teams tough that they've lost to.
Yeah.
They're a little bit better than you think, but I agree. I mean, Washington State did not play like the ranked team that they are.
No. And I actually, because of how bad they played, I actually took them, went against them this week. So anyway, so last week, again, we talked about the Washington Oregon game. That was the difference, pretty much the difference maker between your picks and my picks. I went with Washington, you went with Oregon. I told you I was for the first time betting for LSU, thinking that they might actually lose because I was betting with them, and they still won. So that didn't work quite the way I wanted to. And then obviously you went with the smart pick and picking UNC against my heart mater. I'm not going to even call it my alma mater anymore. I'm going to call it my heart mater because they're killing me, man, every freaking week. The Hurricanes they went in at halftime leading, and I'm like, okay, this game isn't as bad as could potentially be, and then they just fell apart. Coaching again, I feel like in the second half was terrible. But yeah, I think Duke is the one that's surprising me. I think that we all know that they've only lost one game this season and everything, but they've definitely they have the quarterback too. Riley Leonard. He's been in talks of one of the top quarterback
Is he back
prospects
or is he
too.
still out? I thought he was out.
I thought that he came back this last game. I
Did
would
he?
have to
Okay.
look. I'm not
Okay.
positive. But I feel like the one game that they lost, he was out, and then this game he came back. But fingers crossed they don't win anymore, because I'd still it's terrible to say. I'd still like Miami to move up the ACC a little bit. They have a uphill climb at this point in time, but
What do you think about? And I guess we'll get to this week's games here in a second because I got a question for you once we get to this week's games.
okay, I'll just switch over right now. So this
My
is this
question
week's
is: do you think that? And we both picked Florida State over Clemson, which we should.
over Duke.
Excuse me.
Florida State plays Duke.
I'm sorry, they played Duke. So we both took Duke. I mean Florida State. Excuse me. But I don't know. I took that
If it
thinking
was
Leonard. I took
if it
that thinking
wasn't
Leonard would still
in
out.
if it wasn't in Florida State, if it wasn't at FSU, I would have actually picked Duke with the points. But going in and playing in Tallahassee is a very hard ask for most teams.
Right.
And then Florida State's defense, and they have a top prospect in a quarterback as well, with Jordan Travis. So I as much as it pains me to root, you know, for FSU for anything, I just think that they got this. I think that their defense is going to be too much for Duke to overcome.
No, they are playing well defensively, and it seems that when Florida State is good, they've got that old school dog defense that they've had in the past. But just looking at the picks this week again, number 7 Penn State takes on number 3 Ohio State at the Horseshoe. Other marquee games: number 17 Tennessee at number 11 Alabama. I was surprised by that spread. I actually took Tennessee, as
I
you
did
did
too.
as well. 9.5 points seems like a lot. Maybe they know something we don't.
Tennessee
You know,
always gives Alabama fits too. So whether or not, or the last couple of years, I shouldn't say always, whether or not Tennessee can figure it out, I think that they can figure it out within a score or within 9 points. I mean, that 9.5, that means, it could be three field goals. I mean, like, that's a big enough spread for me that they're giving Alabama, I think, a little bit too much credit. Alabama's offense just to me isn't clicking the way we know Alabama offense is to click. So Tennessee can put points up. So
we
we'll
both
see.
picked Wisconsin. They're laying 2.5 against Illinois. Iowa, we both chose Iowa, probably the most successful, ugliest football team in America. The next game is interesting to me, and I kind of want to piggyback what you said earlier about your shock that Washington State played so bad last week. I can't see them playing that badly 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah,
Oregon coming off the sting of a loss to Washington. I think Oregon's going to win. I just thought 18.5 points was quite a
is
bit.
a lot. And this is the one game that I really struggled with. Like, I didn't struggle Ohio State, Penn State, especially with it at Ohio State. It wasn't one that I struggled with. The Michigan State, they always tend to play each other pretty pretty competitively. Being that it's at Michigan State is why I gave them the points on this one. I think it's still going to be a blowout for that game. But the Washington State game really, to me, is just concerning whether or not they're gonna come out and lay an egg again, or if they're gonna actually fight and play Oregon tough.
But Washington State is back to the old style of Pac-12 football. I mean, score a lot of points, don't play a lot of defense. But I was just like you. I was really, really surprised. Ole Miss, we both took Ole Miss. They're playing Auburn. Auburn's reeling. They're just really struggling. They don't have much in the way of an offense. They're trying to run a wide open Baylor style offense. They're trying to run that Jeff Lebby at OU type offense with Philip Montgomery, was they hired him as the OC this year. They just don't have the tools at receiver or quarterback, or really offensive line for that matter, to be very successful. And you see that week in and week out with the points they're putting up. So I don't think it was I think it was kind of a no-brainer to take Ole Miss, and you chose them as well. We both took Florida State at home against Duke. This was interesting to me. Michigan State, who's in a nosedive, and they are playing in East Lansing, playing the rival Michigan. I think about it. This was my struggle game. As much as you struggle with Oregon,
Right.
this was my struggle game. Rivalry, all that stuff, playing at home. I still decided to lay the 24.5 points and take
A lot of points.
Michigan. I know.
Yeah.
I know. I just
If it wasn't at Michigan State, I would have went Michigan even with the points. But with it at Michigan State, I'm like, I think that they could keep it somewhat
right.
level, like for a
No,
little,
I
at least for
totally
a little
agree.
while.
I totally get what you're saying and totally agree with everything you're saying as far as that goes. I don't know. I couldn't pull the trigger on Michigan State. We both took Miami against Clemson. I
a Hail
think if the
Mary at this
point
point.
spread, I think if the point spread was a little different, I might have gone with Clemson. But 2.5 points to me is not that much. I think Miami is a better team. Let's hope Mario Cristobal doesn't screw this one up. You know, and
Yeah.
decide to not kneel on it or do whatever he's doing. I think Mario's a hell of a recruiter. I think they get talent, but I'm with you on what you said earlier in assessment of coaching. I don't know sometimes if he's quite makes the decisions that need to be made at that head coaching spot. And then this game, I think the USC Utah game is really, really interesting. Again, I struggled with this one, not as much as that Michigan State, but Utah plays really good defense.
Yeah.
USC does not play really good defense. I just think
Utah doesn't have an offense.
Yeah, but I still think 6.5 points. I think that defense can do some stuff.
Yeah,
With Utah.
and to be honest with you, we joked about it a couple weeks ago. Every time I pick against Utah, they win. So I have a feeling that I'm going to lose this game just because it's always how
I hope you're right. I really do. I hope you're right because I picked Utah.
Yeah. So I think the one thing here is I think Caleb Williams, after playing so badly last week, I think he's going to have a good game. It's at USC. He's going to feed off the crowd. I think he'll feed off some of the negative attention this week. And it's, it's an important game. So I feel like he's going to look at it and kind of take it under his own wing. Before we get going, let me remove this. Speaking of Caleb Williams, I know that I texted you about this the other day, that there were reports that over the summer, he said if he declared this year that he wanted a minority interest of ownership in whatever team drafted him. Now, I did a little research myself. Number one, I didn't think that would be legally possible, especially because you're circumventing the whole salary cap and the point of salary cap. And if you opened up this can of worms, what every single person coming out would be trying to demand that kind of treatment. Now what surprised me is I did find that Aaron Rodgers supposedly requested part of the Jets team ownership, and the NFL knocked it down, shot it down over the summer. If that's true, if that's the case, then this is all just a rumor because there is no way.
I don't think it's a rumor. I don't think it's a rumor. I think he wants. That's a pretty arrogant camp. That's a pretty arrogant camp.
I was pulling for this kid too, and I get at the quarterback level, like when you're a quarterback like that, you want someone that's a little arrogant.
Right.
You want that arrogance. But I don't know. He's been rubbing me a little bit more and more the wrong way lately. And then you got kids like like Penix, and you have Bo Nix, and these other very capable quarterbacks that are also going to be coming out next year. Drake May, although he had a bad game last weekend, statistically, he had a bad game against Miami. He still it didn't look great, but he's a very good quarterback. And you're going to have another team in the top 10 that's going to pick one of these other guys that's going to be successful with one of these other guys.
Well, if you do, and if you want to do some more research, look at Caleb Williams' history. This is another kid that was a manufactured quarterback from a young age. His father owned a training facility. He was built to be a quarterback. The way they handled their college recruiting, very similar to what's going on now. So this doesn't shock me because, like I said earlier, this is a very arrogant group. I think the one player in the league that probably had the closest relationship with an owner and reaped the benefits outside of the realm of football is Tom Brady. everybody talked about how unselfish Tom Brady was. He continually took less than market value contracts,
Yeah, because he
but
had a
nobody
half.
knew. Right, nobody knew the other
Yeah,
side of it that
he
he
had
had
a half
worked
a
out with
billion
Bob
dollar
Kraft.
wife, number one, and
Yes,
number
that is
two,
true.
the different advertising and sponsorship
Well, not even
agreements
just
and
that, it
like
was if you remember when they built the new Foxborough, one of the things that Bob Kraft did, which was ingenious, was, "I don't wanna make this just a place that people come, 8 or 9 or 12 Sundays a
yep,
year for
yep,
football." They built a huge shopping center around it. They had all these businesses around it, and if you ever noticed where TB12's headquarters was, it was in one of those places, right? So there was all these other agreements behind the
right,
scenes not related. So, but no, I don't think there's any way in holy hell that the NFL itself would allow a player to have ownership in a team until he was done. Mahomes recently came out and said, "I want to be an owner in the NFL. I want ownership in a team." He kind of said the same things, but I think that's going to have to wait till he's done playing ball
I think
because
that they're not only circumventing the salary cap, but I feel like there's also becomes that conflict because if you're
right,
a part owner of the Chiefs, and like they can't up and trade you to the
right,
Houston Texans, like
right.
there's too
And
much behind that.
what's the other big elephant in the room that nowadays we all have to deal with? It's the gambling, right? It's the
Yeah,
sports gambling being legal in states and all of that. If I'm a player and I'm part owner of a team that's in a state that legalizes sports gambling, and all of a sudden there's I have influence over games and outcomes, and so no, I don't think you'll ever see
yeah,
that. But going back to Caleb Williams, this is what the NIL world has created. Okay, this is what it's created with these guys. Am I saying that NIL is bad? No, I think players should have the opportunity to make more money. Do I think a guy should make $3.5 million a year just for showing up? No. That to me is not. I mean, a lot of these deals are not NIL. A lot of these deals are legalized payments for recruiting
right.
purposes.
And to be honest with you, I think the one good thing, and we talked about this before about nil, is that we might actually be convincing some of these guys to stay in school,
Right.
for an extra year or two, because
Yeah, and Caleb
hey,
Williams said that himself.
he technically speaking could probably get more money on a nil deal than he will with your rookie contract.
His NIL deal
Um,
is more than a rookie base contract. It's
yeah.
like $3.5 million a
Which
year.
I mean, realistically, if he's number one pick, he's gonna get a whole heck of a lot more money going into the NFL. But it's all the first year. It's that signing bonus, and then years 2 through now 5, because you're a first
Right.
overall pick. You're working on a base salary, $1-2 million a year normally, and then your fifth year you got the option. So it's that signing bonus that's really nice your rookie year that you come into. But I honestly think that the one good positive thing is it might keep some of these kids in school. The
Well, what
second
it's
part,
doing.
though,
Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I
Go
was
ahead.
just going to say the second part, the only thing that bothers me is one thing about college sports is that they are given a free education because majority, not all of them, because of their skill set.
Right.
My only issue is if you are getting paid millions of dollars to come play for the team, there's a part of me that feels like you should be paying for your education. Because you're taking away an opportunity from somebody else that might need that scholarship or is not going to get a nil deal. Um, I feel like those are the people, especially if you're making $1 million, this year, then that scholarship position should go to somebody else.
That's a great point, and I appreciate that. I think that's a huge point. But also, I think that there are some schools like BYU, for instance, when they raised all their money for NIL, what they did was they came out and they paid all the walk-ons scholarship for him. So
Oh,
there are no walk-ons at BYU.
that's
All
nice.
the players that were walk-ons, they're actually getting NIL money to cover their tuition. So you're right. The way they did it and the way they manipulated it is, yeah, you're only supposed to have 80 scholarship guys, but we got 120 scholarship guys because all our walk-ons now are paid for.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing, and going back to the Caleb Williams situation where this is interesting, and he's kind of made this known, the idea of a team, and I think for a while now, Arizona was kind of that team that where they were just going ahead and moving guys where they wanted them, playing and saying, you know what, if we lose and we're the first overall pick, that's fine. And so without using the NBA term of tanking, we're kind of purposely tanking, although they have been playing halfway decent.
Yeah,
It now
and they
gives,
just
yeah,
made Kyler Murray active. They're bringing
they,
him up from
they made him
pup
active, but
list.
they don't want Kyler Murray to stay there.
Yeah.
They want Kyler Murray to move on.
So maybe they're trying to get him to play so that people can see what they're
Right.
getting.
But I also think, Sarah, that it's gone ahead and it's put Caleb Williams in a position to say, hey, I get to choose when I want to come out now. Arizona, if you think you're going to lose games to get me, I don't want to play for you. I don't have to play for you because I'm still making $3.5 million. And it goes back to your thing about keeping kids in school. It gives these top draft picks, these number one overall quarterbacks, maybe a little bit of a right of first refusal almost to say, you know what, I'm going to, who got the number one overall pick? No, I don't want to play for them. I'm going to hang out a while and see what happens next year. So it's definitely going to influence.
What's gonna suck for him is if, say, Arizona gets the 4th or 5th pick, and someone else goes out and decides that Drake May is number 1 and he's not, and then the team 2 and 3 need defensive guys because they picked their quarterback last year and he's sitting at 4, and so is Arizona.
Goes back to the old saying: is your on the field talent bigger than your off the field issues?
Yeah. So it'll be an interesting year this year, especially in the quarterback hunt. I think last year there was some questions if there was any first round talent past past Bryce Young and CJ Stroud and Richardson. And I think that this year I think we got a good 7, 8, 9 guys that could all be taken very early in the draft. So,
well, hey, we appreciate you listening to us, watching us here on the fourth quarter on the Buffalo Rumblings Vizcast Network. We'll be on every week. Just a little bit of a programming note. We separated this show from the Line to Gain, so we will have a freestanding college football show every week coming to you that you can get on and watch. And those will be that'll be put up Friday mornings.
Yep,
Friday morning to get you ready for the weekend college football games. You can check out the fourth quarter with us. And I'm the big O, Jerry Ostroski. She's Sara Larson. And we'll be back next week. Again, catch us Friday morning right here on the Buffalo Rumblings Vidcast Network. And have a good week.